Hey guys, Tracy at USA Knife Maker. Today we're going to go over some 9-inch discs, some feathering adhesive, Beaumont flat and beveled disc, and we're going to take a look at PSA versus a non-PSA disc. Then some economy using 9x11 sheets on a disc sander grinder versus PSA disc. So to start off with, the first question is, why wouldn't you just use a flat platen on your grinder? And let's step over to the flat platen grinder, and I'll show you what the issue is on making things flat on a flat platen grinder versus a disc grinder. All right, so the issue is on a flat platen grinder, we have a piece of ceramic glass on this to reduce friction. And we don't have any tension on this belt. It's going to be exaggerated a bit. I just want to illustrate what the problem is. If you put a piece of metal on that, and what happens is the belt will pucker up at top, and it also gathers up at the bottom. It's a little hard to do with two hands, but you'll see that belt will pucker up like that as you apply more pressure. And what happens is, rather than grinding flat, this pressure up here tends to grind away at that little corner right there, and the pucker on the bottom will grind away there, and you end up with a convex piece versus a flat piece. Now certainly that part right there, 50% of it's dead flat, but the problem is up top here and down there, it starts to round over. Now if this was the size of a scale and you're going to put this on your knife handle, you're going to find a big gap as you put that on, my fingers being the full flat tang. You're going to look down and you're going to see that rounded off piece. It's going to be rounded this way like that, a convex piece. You're going to have a big gap at the top and you're going to have a big gap at the bottom. Same applies for a bolster. Now on a flat blade, that's not an issue. It doesn't show up. Doesn't really matter that much. But for a tight fit on a bolster, tight fit on a scale, that definitely creates a problem. If you want to make things flat, you need to use a flat grinder. So let's step over and take a look at some of the discs that we have and the options that way. Okay, we're going to take a look at a couple of disc options that we have. We carry two different discs from Beaumont Metalworks. These are 9-inch discs. In fact, they're just slightly less than 9-inch discs, and that's an advantage, and we'll show you that in just a minute. We actually have two different ones. These come with a 5/8 inch arbor hole, and building your own disc grinder is pretty easy, and I would suggest that you do that. They're keyed for a 5/8 arbor hole. So we have a flat one, and that's dead flat, and we'll take this flat edge, and that's going to be a dead flat disc, and you're going to see that on this carpenter scale, it's dead flat all the way. The other option is a beveled disc. Now this has about a 1.5 or 1 degree bevel tapered into it from the center to the edge. There's about a 1.5 degree drop. Now if you put it on there, it looks dead flat, and it is. But if you drag it across, you're going to see a gap on this side of something like 3 degrees. Now why would you want to do that? In using a disc grinder, if you put a piece of material on that way and it's spinning around, and you go across center, we'll use our flat one to illustrate, and you go across center, all of a sudden, and it's rotating this way, all of a sudden it's going to grab on that and you're going to move it. And if you're using short blades, short pieces of metal, it's never a problem. But on a bigger piece of metal and you slip across that center, it gets really grabby and you end up messing up your work. The advantage to the beveled disc is when you go across center, you're up in the air. So you have that gap. It's not going to grab as it rotates on the ascending side or descending side, depending on your direction. It's just not going to grab. Now, the advantage of the flat is that it's dead flat. The disadvantage is it tends to grab. Okay? The advantage to the bevel is it's not going to grab when you're going across, but there's going to be a slight hollow grind. If you look at it from this direction, going across there, you're going to see just a slight kind of hollow. Now, if you've done the math, and you can do the math, and I'd invite you to it, over the width of, say, 1.5 or 2 inches, that hollow grind effect on this beveled disc, if you're grinding a flat blade, something like that, you're going to get just a slight hollow because that end is lower than that end, and that middle is higher due to that bevel. Okay? That bevel is, that hollow grind is going to give you about a 1/10 of 1% of 1 thou hollow grind. That hollow grind effect is so small, a human hand can't hold it steadier than what that hollow grind effect is going to give you. Okay, so some people are concerned about that the hollow grind effect that you're going to get from this slight taper. I can tell you it's so small that you're not going to notice it, and you can just ignore it. Now the other concern some guys have on this is when you put a piece of paper on it, is it going to pucker, and how will it fit over a convex surface? I guarantee it does. It's invisible. That bevel is invisible to paper, and it's just not going to be a problem. You'd think that putting a piece of paper over like a beach ball, it would pucker up and gather up like that. That bevel is so small that it's just not a problem. So let's take a look at some different options with discs. Now everyone's pretty familiar with the PSA disc, and that has adhesive built in. You peel off the backing, slap it on, and put it on your disc that way. Problem is with a PSA disc, you almost got to heat them off using a heat gun, or scrape them off and destroy the PSA disc when you're doing it. Now it may be that you're not even halfway through with these PSA discs. They're expensive. They're $2, $3, $4 a piece, depending upon what kind you're getting. And there's a better solution than that. So what we're going to talk to you today a little bit is about something called 3M feathering disc adhesive. We sell this in tubes, and the advantage to this material is you can put a disc on and peel it off just like a Post-it note. Post-it note has low tack adhesive. This is medium tack adhesive. It comes to us out of the auto industry. Guys doing body work had to switch out discs pretty often, and so they would swap out discs this way. In use, what you do is you smear it on, allow the solvents to evaporate, and slap on your disc. Now I have some here kind of started. Here's a flat one. Basically goop it on enough and just spread it out. Of course this disc is going to be on your grinder, but we just grabbed some off the shelf for this video. So we're just going to smear this stuff around, and we're going to let the solvents evaporate a bit in here, and then we'll come back so it has a good medium tack. We'll just set that to the side. Now here's one that I already have some stuff on. We've let that evaporate a bit, so we've got a nice tacky kind of finish on there. And so we could take a PSA disc like this, get the dust off, and place it on there, centered. And there you have it. So big deal, right? Now here's the advantage of this stuff is you take it off. Maybe you didn't use this disc up. This is a 60 grit, and now you want to switch it to a different grit, and you don't want to tear that up. Peel that one off. Put another disc on there, different grit, and there's going to be enough of that tacky material left on there, and you're going to get several disc changes on this. So there's going to be plenty there. We're going to take that, put it on, and now you've got your next disc ready to go. Okay, so we can peel that off. Now here's really the cool stuff about this is maybe you want to get maybe you've got 400 grit sandpaper. This is 400 9x11 sheet. I'm going to just put that on there like that, center it. And these discs are not a true 9-inch. They're just a hair under. So you can see that there's a little paper left on that edge and a little paper left on that edge on the 9-inch width. And now that's stuck on there pretty good. We're going to take just a plain knife, and we're going to trim that off. Again, this would be on your disc grinder. It's pretty easy to do. Just like that. That's waste. So now we've got 400 grit on there at the cost of a 9x11 sheet. And if we touch it, do whatever we need to do, and maybe it's not used up, peel that off, set that aside and save it. Here's a disc that I've got with 800. The humidity's curled it up a little bit, but I didn't use it up. I'm going to put it back on here, center it, and then I'm going to stick that back on there, and I'm good to go with an 800 disc. That's a great deal of economy. You get a nice value out of that, and when you use that up, peel it off, put a new one on, and there you go. So now the cost difference between a typical 9x11 sheet versus a PSA disc or a non-PSA disc is pretty substantial. You're going to find probably a wider range of papers in 9x11s, especially in the higher grits when you're trying to do a finish. Now, one of the things that you'll find that when you're getting into higher grits, 400, 600, 800, 1000, that kind of grit, you're going to find that it does, any bumps, any dust, any grit between the paper back and the disc is certainly going to telegraph through the abrasive, and you're going to end up with scratches on your material that you don't like, that kind of thing, or just kind of bumps a little bit. On my disc grinder, I don't have it on these. At the house, I will put a piece of, find a thin rubber on here, a thin rubber sheet, 1/16 inch, 50 thou, 60 thou, that kind of thing on there, and I'll just trim it off. And what I'll use is this stuff, 3M Super 77. I'll spray that on the disc, I'll put the rubber on, I'll trim it off, and then I'll use the feathering adhesive between that rubber disc there and with the paper, and I'll have a little bit of padding on that, and it stops the telegraph of the of any grit, any bumps on this real thin stuff. This real SC paper tends to get real thin, and it's not necessarily made for a disc, and that's one of the things where you're paying on a PSA disc. Generally has a thicker cloth or paper backing, and that gives it a slight padding, but the alternative is to simply put a little rubber on there. Maybe you won't even need it, a lot of guys don't, just throwing it out there for a tip. So that's kind of a quick walkthrough on feathering adhesive. For 3M feathering adhesive, reusing 9 PSA discs, using certainly 9x11 paper, then the difference between flat and beveled disc that we have. Now, cleanup on this stuff can be 3M solvent. I got some here. General purpose adhesive cleaner. We sell that, or acetone. Most any kind of solvent will clean this off. At some point, you'll want to clean it off, start a fresh load. But you're going to get a dozen or 2 applications on paper, and as you peel it off and stick it back on, certainly some of it's going to transfer onto the back of these discs. As you peel it off, you can see where that comes off like that, and you're going to have residue left on the back of your disc, and eventually enough of it's going to transfer from your disc onto from your metal disc onto your abrasive, where you're going to have to reapply or clean it off and start over. It's not that big a deal. The economy's worth it. It's a quick operation, and then you can reuse these discs all day long. So we got one there. This one we had in the shop. We use this all the time. It's several months old. When you need a quick change like that, that's all there is to it. Hey guys, consider using a disc grinder and feathering adhesive. Makes things pretty flat. You'll get some economy using 9x11 sheets, and just want to tell you thanks for your business here at usaKnifeMaker.com. Stop by knifedogs.com and visit with thousands of other knife makers and learn, share, network. Again, hey, this has been Tracy, usaKnifeMaker.com. Have a good day.